Many of us grew up learning the circle of fifths without actually knowing that's what we were doing. If you learned the scales in the order C, G, D, A, E, B, etc., 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 then you were actually practicing the circle of fifths. I was when I was growing up, but I didn't know that name and I didn't see it as a circle. And I think once I did, that's when a lot of music theory pieces fell into place for me. In this video, I'll show you how I teach the circle of fifth to all my students. You can do this with students at any age or any level. The first thing I think you should do to teach the circle of fifths effectively is to improvise around the circle of fifths. This is the basis of one of my courses, which is called the Circle of Fifths Odyssey. That one is inside my Vibrant Music Teaching membership. But here's the basic idea. I'll give it to you for free because I want more people doing this. You take C major and you improvise in C major together at the lesson on week 1. You also play games about C major and do other activities. Then the next week you improvise in C major and then G major. The following week you do C, G, D. You see where I'm going with this, right? So we're improvising in all the different keys. Why do I do this? I do this so that students can understand the pattern much more quickly than if you did scales in depth with proper fingering on each key. If you do that, it's going to take a lot longer to go around the circle. So you kind of forgot where you started. Whereas when you go on a Circle of Fifths Odyssey, you're improvising all along the way and you're getting there in 12 weeks, or you can do it in 6, you can do it in double time, and you can repeat it over and over again until students start to get that the sharps build up along the way and then the flats decrease, or do the circle of fourths and do the opposite. It's all about building an awareness of the pattern and understanding the relationships. Doing this also helps your students to understand the basic facts of what a key is. That can be a difficult thing for them to actually fully grasp. You can give them definitions or have them recite definitions back to you or do theory worksheets, but until they really get it, a key doesn't mean a whole lot. A scale doesn't mean a whole lot. And if they do get it, they're a lot more likely to practice these things and to recognize them in their pieces too. Now, the first few weeks of doing that improv, I would do it without much comment, just we're looking for which sharps or flats we need to use, and that's it, and then we'd make some music, and that's lovely. After a few weeks, I'd start to talk about those patterns and have students verbalize what was happening and what makes a difference, like why are we using those sharps, how does it sound when we play the natural key instead, etc. The next stage of really understanding the circle of fifths is to start drawing it, in my view, and I have students do this as a cheat sheet or a reference sheet for games or for theory work they're doing. So they have to draw their own circle of fifths. I actually used to have a poster in my studio and I took it down because I want my students to draw it every single time so that they get practice in building this pattern. This is the way I teach my students to draw the circle of fifths. When drawing a circle of fifths, I start with a plus sign shape. So a line down and then a line across. We then fill in between those lines with 2 diagonal lines like this and then like that. Doing it this way means we don't run out of space for any of the letters as we're going, and we always remember how many letters we need to do. So now we can start adding the letters. I start at the top with C, then work my way up 5 notes to G, keep going to D, keep working our way up this way, making sure we understand that these are going up to the 5th note of the scale we just did, or a perfect 5th. So E, then B, G flat or F sharp, you can choose one or the other or write both of them. Then D flat, A flat, E flat, B flat, and F. And that's a complete circle of fifths. If you want to add the minor notes, you can do that on the outside or start a new circle of fifths and go to the relative minor. Now, the first few times we do that together. I do it on my whiteboard, the student does it on a piece of paper, then we use it as a reference point for a game we're playing together or an improv we're doing or something like that. and then I take back their piece of paper and I throw it away, and they have to start again the next time. Once they've done it quite a few times, I stop doing it alongside them and I have them do it on their own, and I just help when necessary. And then eventually they're going to graduate to just thinking about the pattern. But it takes a lot of rough work, a lot of drawing for them to get that used to it that they can just think through it in their mind. When the student is starting to get more comfortable with the circle of fifths, we'll also start talking about the order of sharps and flats. I prefer them just to know the circle of fifths and therefore the number of sharps or flats in each key, and then start to learn what they are before we deal with, okay, we have to do them in this order. But it is definitely a useful step to add because, as you know, they're building upon each other as they go along. So that's when we start to add beside the circle of fifths. You could either draw a little staff and have them do it as a key signature, or just have them write F sharp, C sharp, etc. beside each one. Before they get to a full imaginary circle of fifths, I actually like to have them do a preliminary step of just having an imaginary piano. So we close the piano lids and they have to draw the circle of fifths without looking at the piano. Many students in the beginning are looking or checking, like putting their hand on the piano or playing a scale to make sure they've got the fifth note and that they're doing it in the right order and they've got the right sharps or flats. But then I want them to be able to do it without having a physical piano sitting in front of them. So they graduate to an imaginary piano and then eventually to an imaginary circle of fifths. So it's just in their head. Now, a quick little note before we wrap up here on the circle of fifths, and that is about mnemonics. You'll notice I haven't brought them up here. I know there's the famous Father Charles one that a lot of people use, or maybe you have another one. Why don't I use them? I prefer students really understand the pattern before they get to a mnemonic. Now, if a student they've done this kind of work with me for a while, and then they're going to a theory exam, I have no problem with them using the mnemonic if it makes it faster for them to find the right notes. But what I don't want is for them to detach it from the logic, because the pattern is actually quite logical. If you look at it on the piano, it makes a lot of sense. And when you take it into mnemonic land, it can end up seeming like something you just have to memorize, and that's just not true. You can work it out if you forget it. So I prefer to save mnemonics for later if needed, or not use them at all. I hope you enjoyed this little blast through the circle of fifths and it gives you some new ideas for your students. If it does, let me know in the comments below, and if there's anything you want to request that I do in a future video, let me know that as well.